This is RPD Officer Leon Kennedy, and you're listening to the Let's Talk Resident Evil podcast.
What is going on, everyone? Anthony here, and welcome back to another episode of the Let's Talk Resident Evil podcast. And this podcast is a special one because we got Resident Evil 4 Remake announced at the PlayStation State of Play. It wasn't DLC. We didn't get the DLC yet, but as of this recording, the Capcom showcase is happening next Monday, and that is going to be potentially showing either more Resident Evil 4 stuff or Resident Evil Village DLC. It was a long time coming. I thought they were going to at least get the DLC out first, but they probably need more time to kind of roll everything out. We may get it before the end of the year. That's my guess, along with the updates. Maybe we'll get some more information on the next generation upgrades, or the current, it's really current gen now, but those current gen updates for PS5, Xbox, PC, all that stuff will be happening. So it's a good time to be a Resident Evil fan. There's a lot of stuff to look forward to. We were just kind of in the dark for a little bit until we found out, oh, here it is. It's coming in March. So March of 2023. They've definitely been busy with getting everything together here, and they always have a plan with rolling stuff out, and they have multiple teams working on a bunch of stuff. So I'm sure the team that is working on Resident Evil 4 Remake, you know, they're trying to get everything ready for that release next year, and then you have another team that's working on the Village DLC. So the other thing that was announced along with this, it was a bunch of Resident Evil goodies. You know, the Resident Evil VR stuff continues with the PlayStation VR 2, which is, you know, getting kind of buttered up as it gets released. You know, they're really putting a lot of stuff into this VR unit this time, where the VR launched before, it was kind of lackluster, and there's probably, you know, a handful of games that you should probably check out on it. Resident Evil 7 is included in that. But I kind of saw this VR update coming. I just knew it wasn't going to be when the game launched. It was going to take time. So it looks like Resident Evil is getting a VR update for Resident Evil 4 Remake at some point and Resident Evil Village. They're both going to have support for the PS VR 2. So this is an option that is strictly there for someone that's getting it, investing into the PS VR 2. It's probably going to be a hard unit to get, just like the consoles. So obviously try to pre-order it and get everything you can early on, because there's going to be a lot of people that are trying to get this thing at first. But who knows? Maybe, you know, we'll see more companies roll out some VR support for their games. But Resident Evil is all about it. We just saw the Resident Evil 4 on the meta, on the Facebook thing. So that happened as well with the VR. I will be streaming that. That is going to be happening probably next month. And we're going to be able to finally cover that. So in the meantime, I'll cover some Resident Evil 4 VR stuff. But with that being said, a lot of people are like, damn, Resident Evil 4 has gotten a lot of treatment over the years. And, you know, it's gotten a lot of ports of the same, you know, stuff over and over again. It's been updated. Frame rates have been, you know, improved. Graphics have been updated a little bit, but very, very little. And then now we actually get a remake of Resident Evil 4. I mean, that really took the show, you know, that, and I think a lot of people were excited for Callisto Protocol. There's a lot of good stuff that is coming in this generation, this gaming generation. The consoles really started off slow. I'm really looking forward to this, man. I think it looks really good. And I know, you know, the argument kind of goes into like whether or not, you know, you look back and you say, okay, Resident Evil 4 is a near perfect game. Does it really have to be remade? And I think the answer is yes. I think it's been enough time to where there's been a lot of improvements that they can implement into that. But I still like Resident Evil 4 as its own. I still think there's dated things about it, like the, you know, quick time events, and there's certain things that I wish were changed with the island and that last half of the game a little bit, and the order and stuff, the pacing. But I still think it's one of the best games ever. It's so fun. It's addicting still. You can play it so much. And it always works with just, I guess, like if you compare it to everything after, because it has such an impact on the way developers kind of approach their games. And it really started something special. It was really special when it came out. Resident Evil 4 was, just one of those games that I played over and over again. It was so good. And everyone was talking about it, and it was getting, really rave reviews. And I remember thinking, wow, like Resident Evil is really in the spotlight now, and it was before, but it was on another level where you had casual people getting into Resident Evil through Resident Evil 4, and that was their gateway for a lot of fans. And that doesn't surprise me because it did switch up the gameplay, and it is when it kind of turned into a different, rendition of what it used to be when it comes to survival horror being kind of more in the backseat. We got away from the fixed camera angles, and I love the fixed camera angles. Those are like my favorite. But it was a turning point. So there's a lot to live up to in terms of the game being something that it needs to be an essential remake that is here to stay, that is going to be here for people that maybe never even played the original, and which is hard to believe because it's on everything. But there's going to be some people that haven't, and they're just going to gravitate towards this one because it's the newest one. And I'm sure it's going to be hard for people to put this over the original. I think it's going to be hard for a lot of people because it's so baked into our brains since 2005. We're used to it, and we've played it on everything that you can think of. And so you do have an attachment to it, but you have to, look at it as, okay, let's see what they do. And as long as they don't, cut important stuff out and they don't do stuff like that, and it does really live up to the name. I talked about that earlier in another video about content getting cut and people getting upset about that as soon as Resident Evil 3 was released. And it kind of stayed and echoed in the comments ever since, whether or not that's going to be a problem in Resident Evil 4 and 5 and 6 or whatever, however many remakes, they have. What are they going to do that makes it live up to the original or make it better? Resident Evil 3, for me, I really enjoyed Resident Evil 3. I think a lot of people give it a lot more shit because of the certain things that are taken out of it, but I still really enjoyed it. The story is essentially the same. We have Leon going into the village trying to get the president's daughter out, Ashley Graham. And, Luis is also there, and we see Ada in the trailer and Sadler, and we see Salazar's castle. So there's a lot of cool stuff that, we got excited for, and I talked about on the breakdown, and you guys have been, very supportive. It's definitely been very busy, the past week. As soon as this dropped, I had to do a bunch of stuff in preparation for leaving for the UK. So yes, by the time you're seeing this, I will be in the UK, in London for the Resident Evil Challenger meetup. So a lot of the stuff scheduled is all, posted ahead of time, and I was getting kind of everything ready leading up to the last minute of me leaving, including this show. This will probably be one of the last things I edit before I'm in the skies. But yeah, it's exciting because we kind of needed some new information regarding the franchise. It's been over a year, and Reverse and the DLC are still on their way or probably coming at some point, right? So I would assume that at Summer Game Festival that's happening this weekend, or the Capcom Showcase, that may show off some more information on Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil Village VR, Village DLC, all that stuff. Bunch of VR stuff that they also showed at the PlayStation State of Play. Spider-Man was also announced on PC, which is killer. That is so cool. And I'm happy that all the PS5 stuff is coming on PC. That's how it should be at this point, just to give people an option, put it out on everything. People can't get these consoles, so you can finally play it on the, on PC, which is great. And I think there's a lot of anticipation for a collector's edition. You know, we haven't seen anything on the Resident Evil 4 collector's edition yet. I definitely will be getting it. You know me, I'm going to try to get it. It's going to be GameStop exclusive if they still rock with that, if they still have that deal with GameStop ever since Resident Evil 7. Since Resident Evil has come back in this newer era, they've had all of these deals with GameStop for these collector's editions. But for better or for worse, they are harder to get sometimes. So you have to, you know, got to figure it out. But you can pre-order it when they put them up. But they haven't put them up yet, so we haven't even seen what it's going to be. You know, I'm looking over at my statues and I'm like, damn, it could be another Leon statue, but like, that would be kind of weird, right? Like, I feel like they should do Ada or something, you know? Because we already have a Leon statue. We have, you know, RPD Leon. I wouldn't mind an RE4 Leon statue, don't get me wrong. But, yeah, I wonder what they're going to do for that. That's going to be interesting. Considering they also had, you know, Chris for Resident Evil Village. That was the last one they did, which was badass. That looked really good, and it was really good material. So I'm curious to see what they're going to do for Resident Evil 4 and give that treatment. Now, I know that there has been some Netflix stuff coming out for the show. I will be covering that next month. But to be honest with you, I haven't seen anything new on the trailer yet. You might be like, Anthony, you should have covered it on the channel. Well, I'm in the middle of doing, you know, 10 other videos. So that's kind of, you know, not right now. I got done a bunch of videos, but I had to do so much stuff for Resident Evil 4, and that is what the fans' favorite right now. Quite frankly, if I put out something Resident Evil Netflix related, it probably would have just fucked with the algorithm even more. So I'll probably put some stuff out covering that when I get back. And in terms of the Capcom showcase, expect more videos next week on that as well. I'll be coming back next week, but, you know, the grind doesn't stop. It's going to keep going. So I appreciate, you know, again, watching all the videos, commenting. You know, I see that there's a lot of people in the community that, you know, either are all for this or just kind of not feeling it. And I honestly understand that there is going to be some people that are just like, why? You know, this doesn't really seem necessary. You should do Code Veronica. Code Veronica would be one of the first things I would think of to be remade, you know, because it's something that would be so dope in the Resident Evil engine and just revamped like that. But again, Resident Evil 4, it makes a lot of money. It's a big game. It's one of the biggest games of all time, and it's a money maker. You know, it's going to make a lot of money. It's going to obviously have fans that are going to say, you know what, maybe it's too soon because they feel so close to the original. I think how a lot of people feel with Resident Evil 4 Remake is, you know, maybe it's just too soon to remake Resident Evil. I think that's how a lot of the comments that I see when they talk about Resident Evil 4 Remake happening and they're not really too stoked on it. They have that attachment to the original and they still play it to this day. So it's almost like, you know, why are they doing that? So I see both sides of that, and then I see other people that are just like, I'm not really excited about it. You know, Resident Evil hasn't been good since whatever. You know, there's always those comments, right? But again, there's people that just kind of stopped at a certain point. There's people that jumped back in during the remakes. There's people that jumped back in during 7 and 8. So there's a couple of different perspectives and different audience members that I think it kind of falls into. But with Resident Evil Remake, the 2002, that is, again, like my favorite remake of all time because it really embodies what I feel is the horror of Resident Evil. It has the creepy factor. It has the fixed camera angles. It tells the true story of the Spencer Mansion. It's great. It's great. And, you know, and every single remake after that, I have enjoyed it, but that one always kind of comes out on top. And I still think that might be the case just because that's like my preferred style of Resident Evil. But not to say that this will fit right along, you know, Resident Evil 2 and 3 remake and me really liking it, because I am staying pretty positive about this and I can't wait to see more. You know, they could even show more at this Capcom showcase. We don't know. You know, they showed Resident Evil 3 gameplay shortly after it got announced at a State of Play. So It's always possible. It could be very small, and they can talk about it for a little bit, maybe talk with the developers. They do stuff like that. I think I remember that time it was closer to like Tokyo Game Show, I think, too. So there's a couple things that were that were happening with Resident Evil and the remakes and how they announce everything. Now it's like with this, they just announced it right during the whole Resident Evil Village era, which is kind of strange, to be honest. I did a video and I kind of ate my words. I was saying, hey, I don't think this is going to happen. They're not going to do that. And I was wrong. I'll admit it. I was completely wrong. Some of the leaks online were false, though. So I know some people were like, "Oh, the leaks were right." Well, some were, but a lot of that list that was floating around, half of that stuff wasn't even on there. Some of it was, but there's other stuff that just wasn't on there at all. So you got to always take the leaks with a grain of salt. But I'm still happy. I mean, it's not like I'm going to sit here and be like, "Damn it, I was wrong." No, I'm going to be like, "Hell yeah, it's new stuff to talk about." It keeps me, excited. It keeps me happy. It keeps me revamped. It keeps it refreshing when there's new Resident Evil stuff to talk about and there's new topics to discuss. There's new content to look at. So it's always a good time when there's unexpected stuff around the corner. And to be honest with you, that's kind of how RE3 was. It was almost like, bam, unexpected. Like we knew it was being worked on, but it was like the announcement happened just so quick and it was like we were just on it. So with this, I was like, as soon as I saw it, I was like, all right, constant work mode. And, I have to leave, Wednesday night. By the time you're seeing this podcast, like I said, I'll already be in the UK. But I am excited to, again, cover more stuff. And when you're seeing this, I want to also plug the Resident Evil Challenger Cross LTRE Dice Lock, which will be on the original Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. That is going to be happening on the 14th. So at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it's going to be like 6 UK time, I think. So, stay tuned for that. That's going to be very big. That's going to be, the meetup is Saturday, and then there's going to be a couple days in between, and then it's going to be the dice lock. So, yes, that is going to be happening. I just wanted to say that because when you see this podcast, it will be like a few days before. So I just want to let you guys know. I know I didn't live stream this week, but that will change once I get back. But my next live stream will be in the UK with the RE Challenger team, and I'm so stoked for that. I'm so excited. It's a good feeling to be able to go over there and just, hang out with everyone and just to see everyone in the Resident Evil community. And, to really think, because Resident Evil Challenger just turned 17. So to think about that, that's probably, and it is, the oldest running Resident Evil channel or Resident Evil, I guess brand online that has been doing content. So, I just want to say happy birthday to Resident Evil Challenger. Happy 17 to that. And you can almost drink in the UK, right? I think you have to be 18 to drink in the UK. So you can almost drink in the UK. It's almost time. No. But Resident Evil Challenger is 17 years old, the actual brand. So I just wanted to say, happy birthday, give a shout out to that. And I will be attending the meetup, and then we will be doing the dice lock. So yeah, it's just very exciting. There's so much stuff going on, but it's a good busyness. It's like a good, because it's going to be more of like a getaway, vacation for myself and Callie. So it's going to be great. And I'm looking forward to it. So when you're seeing this, yes, I'll be premiering a bunch of stuff, and it's all good. But yeah, Resident Evil 4 is going to be really taking up a lot of the time. Now, I want to do a Resident Evil 4 dice lock when I get back. I want to plan that out and do that. So that might be my next dice lock. I think it's only appropriate, and I'll probably do some Resident Evil 4 hype streams, get excited, get the ball rolling with the live streams and get the audience coming in again. I really would like to break over 100 viewers again. That would be really cool. It's been a while since I was able to do that. Thank you guys for just watching all the content. And there's a bunch of stuff that I'm going to be covering when there's the Capcom event. I keep saying Capcom creator event, but it's not a creator event, but it's a Capcom showcase. And that is, Capcom creators can stream it, and I normally would stream it if I, wasn't all the way over in the UK. So instead, I'm going to be doing the videos. I'm going to be compromising, doing it that way, and just covering whatever comes out. But the Resident Evil 4 ideas of, like, you know, bringing back Krauser, bringing back Wesker, I'm all for bringing that stuff back. You know, I don't think any of that stuff should be cut. I think it should be in there. And if anything, it should be explained more, you know, because I really had a lot of couple days to not only, you know, write a bunch of scripts for a bunch of videos, but also just kind of like let everything sink in before I recorded this podcast. That's why I made this one like last on the recording list. I don't know if I'm going to release it last in the order of videos, but you know, in terms of how I'm recording it, because I really wanted to sit down and like think about it, because I've watched the trailer like a million times over at this point. I've seen the screenshots. So, you know, it looks like it is following the similar path of, you know, Sadler and the Los Illuminados, but I really want to see Ada Wong come back full swing. Albert Wesker can be back in the background somewhere, and Jack Krauser to be implemented in the story a little bit more, and maybe he can have more of a presence and explain a little bit more into him and Leon's past, even though we, again, have seen it before with Operation Javier. But again, we're not going to know really about that in this remake. We're not really, you know, we're going in fresh. So how are they going to present it to us in this light? And Ada can have her own scenarios if they actually have separate ways. They could explain a lot of her story again in that way right from the start, or we could take control of her during the actual story for Leon. Who knows what can actually happen. We may also take control of Ashley. That's another thing we haven't really talked about, the Ashley control. Will we be able to go into the Stonewall puzzle and have to solve everything with Ashley again? Maybe. I think there's going to be some kind of like defense thing they might add with Ashley, because I feel like they have to add something with her character instead of just like tossing lanterns and that kind of shit. So, yeah, I really hope that they have some kind of extra modes and they keep the mercenaries. You know, I did a video talking about that, but the mercenaries is so crucial, and I would love to see them do, you know, a cooperative mercenaries. That would be so killer. And especially with the Resident Evil 4 roster of characters, that'd be so cool. But even if they kept the single player, like, that would be cool. Like, I wouldn't mind them doing that. I think there's going to be a lot of replay value like there was in the original Resident Evil 4, and the recent Resident Evil games have a decent amount of replay value, so that's never really been a problem. And, you know, what can I say, guys? The graphics look great. I mean, it's one of those things where the RE engine never fails to impress me. Each game, it obviously improves and it looks great. And there's a lot of talk with this individual title not being on the older consoles. Between now and March of 2023, the big question is, will people be able to get a console before this comes out or play it on PC? Because you cannot play this on the older PS4 or Xbox One. It is coming out just for the current consoles, and to that I say that's fine. I think that's a fine move from them. You know, it's stuff's moving, stuff's progressing, so maybe by then you can actually get a machine. And if you still can't get a machine by then, just wait until you can. And by the time you get it, you'll probably have a lot more to play, because to be honest with you, you're not missing out on much. And probably by 2023 is when the game library will kind of pick up a little bit on all sides of it. And a lot of it's just third-party titles anyway. So a lot of people aren't missing out on a lot right now. But don't worry, you know, you still have time to get a machine and to be able to play whatever you want. It's all possible. You just got to, you know, be patient. When that comes out, you'll have a console that can run it in all its glory, and it will look fantastic. There's a lot of things that run into, you know, performance problems when they try to constantly keep pushing it on those older machines. And I think they really want Resident Evil 4 Remake represented in the best way possible, as they should. I wanted to read a comment. This is from Eric Haviland. This is from a Patreon supporter. He's been on Patreon since September of 2020, so I appreciate the support, man. And I wanted to read this comment because I like to read comments like this sometimes and hear different perspectives. and I wanted to talk about it. I thought it would have been an interesting little piece, and I think when he sees this episode, he'll be like, oh shit, he actually featured the comment. Hope he doesn't mind me reading it on here, but I thought this would be a really cool talking point for this show. So he says, hey Anthony, having learned of the announcement of RE4, I have some criticism about it. Capcom has already given half-baked remake titles with 2 and 3. Village was cool, but left us wanting more. And the online titles shouldn't have even tried to begin with. And most annoying thing is that 4 has been ported almost every couple of years or so since its release. Personally, the idea of attempting a remake is far too soon, and 4 needed to be mentioned not for a long while. I can't help but feel Capcom is doing this because people are remaking their games without their consent, which led to remakes 2 and 3. I've seen some indie builds, but it's really not the best substance. The remakes are great, but not finished, lack potential, and stuff missing. Remake 1 was a class of its own. What's the deal of not applying what worked and building up for that? That's what the remakes are missing, being authentic but also fixing what was wrong. Remake 4, I don't have a good feeling of, and Capcom dropped the ball too much. I'm not on board with the game as of yet. I think Capcom really needs to make some mistakes before it gets better, I guess is what he meant to say. Do you think it's too early for RE4 Remake to be remade because of the old games being ported way too many times? And should Capcom stop making remakes until they address the certain screw-ups? 4 set the bar really high, for better or for worse. I love the classics, but I'm also open to retelling stories if done right. Thank you for hearing out, a concerned follower. Sincerely, Eric H. So that is from Eric, and that is an interesting talking point, but I see a lot of people leaving comments like this. I think it's been long enough. I think, 2005, it was 17 years ago. I think it's been long enough for this thing to be remade, and there's been several improvements within Resident Evil that this can easily be made so much better. But I understand, a lot of people might have gotten burnt out on RE4 because it was brought over so many times. It was brought over on, all the PlayStation consoles, all the Xbox consoles, the Switch, you could play it backwards compatibility now. You could play it with, you could play it everywhere. You could pretty much play it on every machine, post GameCube, right? And, with an exception of a few, like, I don't even think it's not on the Wii U, but you could play the Wii version on there. I don't know. You get what I'm saying? There's a lot of stuff that a lot of people were able to get RE4 on their own devices, but at the same time, I think the overall game kind of stayed the same, like looking the same. It performed and looked a little bit better here and there. I know it loads a lot faster and it runs on a higher frame rate if you play it on the PS5. There's little things like that. Same thing with Xbox. When you play it on there now, it is all improved. So I know if you play it on the PS5 and Xbox, they're both improved with the frame rate and the load times. But I could definitely see the argument in it's too soon for people to kind of, see it, or also that they just think that it was ported way too many times and it shouldn't be the Resident Evil that they're doing right now. And I think that was, regardless of the port argument, I think a lot of people wanted to see Code Veronica from the start. I think a lot of people just wanted to see those older games get those treatments because they're drastically different. So to give Code Veronica a Resident Evil 2 and 3 redo in terms of over the shoulder, Code Veronica was completely in fixed camera angle, so it is a completely drastic change. With this, it's more like, okay, RE4 was already over the shoulder. You're pretty much reimagining what RE4 started and going back to that, and now making that, you can move and shoot. You can, they're going to update the controls and everything and make it very snappy. Hopefully have a really good inventory system, hopefully have the merchant come back, all the great boss fights and stuff like that. There's stuff that makes it so memorable. And like I said, I know people kind of hold it close to the chest, and I think that's why they see this and they might just be like, come on, really? Like, out of all the Resident Evil titles, why this one? But again, I think they're just trying to maybe go in some particular order. With the remakes, who knows? They might go back and remake 1. You never know. I think remake, like you mentioned here, remake being, Remake 2002 on GameCube still to this day looks amazing, and it looks great, and that is the classic remake. Yeah, that is the best remake in my opinion as well. So we definitely agree on that. I think it's a common fear for Resident Evil 4 to arrive and people play it and they realize it's missing stuff and it's their favorite game, so people will feel very pissed off. I think there's going to be a lot of individuals that might have, a better feeling about this if it has everything, that all the content in place, and they just, tweak the stuff properly and they reimagine it correctly, because I'm sure they heard the fan feedback. I'm sure they heard all of the, complaints about Resident Evil 3 missing stuff. So maybe they're just like, all right, guys, judging from the press release, they seem to just say, be saying, we're just going to reimagine this thing. We're going to retell the story and, recast, the voice actors, do everything up, again, but really give it to the fans in a way that it's presentable, it's complete, and hopefully it's really going to, live up to what we like, what we know and love about, not just like, but love about Resident Evil 4. And it stays with us for so long because you constantly play it. So it was definitely a turning point for the franchise, and it is when a lot of people did get into the franchise. So you might have people that have stayed off of it or maybe fell off after 5 or 6, and now they're coming back because it's Resident Evil 4. So there definitely is a lot of weight. There's a lot of pressure to succeed and make this as successful as they possibly can. But I think obviously they won't have any problem selling units and making it a success. But in fans' eyes, how will that be portrayed? And is it going to, scratch the itch of every fan? No. You're always going to disappoint someone. There's always going to be someone that's complaining, someone that, isn't really satisfied. And to each their own, because, we all have our own favorites. We all prefer one game over the other. We all have our favorites in this big-ass franchise that is Resident Evil. There's so many titles and remakes now. So there's a lot of things that we can easily kind of, fixate on and be like, this is the reason why, this could fail, or this is the reason why that could fail. But I'm just going to keep an open mind until we see more on the reveals and the trailers, and we can, unravel stuff. And we can really have, again, that whole excitement that we had for all the other remakes, but this time it's going to be just released with a bunch of other stuff. We also have the Village DLC. We have a lot of other stuff that's going to be released leading up to Resident Evil 4 Remake. So with Resident Evil 3, it was more just like, okay, we're just going to put out Resident Evil 3. But now it's like they're still putting out stuff for the main game, and then it goes right to Resident Evil 4. So again, the way they're rolling it out seems to be very strategic, and in anticipation of the DLC for Village, I would say it should be coming out maybe later at the end of the year before the beginning of 2023, including maybe the VR update will also be released in that time, depending on when the PSVR 2 comes out. I'm not sure when it exactly comes out, but regardless, it could be, worked on either way. We actually have a comment from Patreon supporter John Lemley, who is listening to this podcast uncut. So thank you for that, man. Thank you for supporting the show and what I do here. He says, I wonder how much of a risk 4 Remake has of suffering from the fact that Capcom is trying to get out all of their Resident Evil remakes quickly and connect them very smoothly. It's very convenient, and there's a good, safe argument for molding 4 more like the rest of the originals, but it can come off as wanting to service their overall business plan with Resident Evil more than wanting to service the original and go all in on being faithful, assuming, of course, a 4 remake is more necessary than not. So about the comment, I would say there is a lot of stuff with the remakes that a lot of people are saying, because they're constantly putting stuff out, the quality could dwindle, because they're doing stuff so often. And I think that, the idea of a company having multiple developer teams and multiple things going on, that isn't a bad thing. Some projects might be better than others, but I think that there is a game plan here. They definitely had a lot of this remake stuff planned. Whether the last couple of years, put a delay on stuff, or they ended up, scrapping and stopping projects. We've all heard rumors of that, but that's really not out of the nature of Capcom to just kind of like stop and scrap a certain Resident Evil project, or, you know, use elements from this over here and pull it on over here. You know, there's a lot of stuff that goes into that, but I really hope that they, you know, connect everything, but they also just make it consistent with the original, you know, story, which they have so far. You know, even though there's been stuff that have, you know, I guess been debatable in the actual game content, but the overall story finalized is essentially the same exact thing. Resident Evil Remake has the same exact ending. Resident Evil 2, you know, all the survivors escaped for that game. Resident Evil 3, all the survivors escaped for that game. So it's still following, and those events happen. You know, they changed little things here and there, like Nikolai's death at the end of Resident Evil 3, or if he escaped, if he survived. I personally don't think he survived that, but, you know, how could he unless he escaped? But again, they changed those things, those little things, but they still overall told the same exact kind of story. So if they put this stuff out, man, and they really just, you know, if they put them out, you know, sooner rather than later, and they connect them all quickly, that's fine. But again, like you said, they have to make sure that instead of just doing this, you know, because they have these, you know, games they have to get done, and these quotas they have to meet, they have to keep the faith of the original games to some degree. You know, especially because it is it's a newer era. So if I wanted to say, oh, they have to keep the complete original concept for 2 and 3, then 2 and 3 would have been fixed camera angles, right? So they had to change it to accommodate what fans really liked. And, you know, a lot of people forget about this, but they forget that back in, 2014, 2015, Capcom put out Resident Evil Remake finally on other consoles for the first time since the GameCube. They finally put it out, and that was their testing ground, to see if they still have a chance in this survival horror lane years later, and going through the financial struggles and stuff during, the early 2010s. So I think that they always have an idea of how to like gauge the audience, like how to put stuff out and see what people like. And Resident Evil 2 for sure was a big, that was a big step for them to say, okay, this is what people want for the remake. So they're probably going to look more in terms of like, okay, what happened with RE3, even though it was a different team, what happened in here that didn't make people happy? Let's not do that. And that's what I think they're trying to please everyone here, and just make a really good remake, just a really solid Resident Evil 4 remake that will make fans happy. But again, just Resident Evil 4, just that name alone holds a lot of weight, because it is considered one of the best games of all time, one of the best Resident Evil games. Some people would even disagree with that. It can be very divisive. Even the original was very divisive. To this day, it's still very divisive, but it gets a lot of love. It gets a lot of hate. Some people are in the middle. And I feel like Resident Evil 4 Remake will probably get a similar response, but we shall wait and see. But that's really about it for Resident Evil 4 Remake, guys. I mean, I did a lot of videos kind of talking about some essentials, some top videos, some topics I wanted to discuss and hear from you guys. But I wanted to kind of talk about everything in this podcast in terms of the State of Play event. And what can I say? I'm not going to be screaming and yelling and jumping up and down about the whole VR 2 thing. You guys know how I feel about VR. I really liked RE7 in VR. I recently played it and beat it and thought it was awesome. But, VR gets me sick after a couple hours. So, I do like the VR. I do think it's exciting. I will be streaming it. Yes, I will be trying to stream PSVR 2 on Village and RE4. So it will make good content for sure. But again, I always have to do it in a couple hour increments, because I do get motion sickness from that stuff. So while that stuff is good, I wasn't like, all right, I have to immediately jump on and make a video about it. I'm sure most of you really wanted to hear thoughts on Resident Evil 4, because that really was the beast of the announcement for Capcom for sure. And at this event that's happening in a week, that's going to be 35 minutes. And I'm sure Resident Evil will be there, probably Street Fighter 6 as well, probably a couple things. So again, I'm going to be making, a bunch of videos on that in a couple days from when you're seeing this actual video. And, that's it, and that's that. It's been a crazy week. I hope you guys enjoy the content. I hope you guys stay subscribed, you stay tuned in. Support me on all of the social media platforms. Check out my YouTube memberships, the Patreon. Download this episode of the podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Libsyn. It's all for free, so you can download the audio version of this. I know a lot of people like to listen. And I will probably be back sooner rather than later because I have a couple collaborations I have planned that I got to get to when I get back to the UK. You know who you are. And I will be doing probably another podcast talking about the Resident Evil showcase, the Capcom showcase that will probably showcase some Resident Evil. And who knows, we might actually get some DLC, some next-gen current-gen upgrade announcement plans. And maybe we can actually have some kind of footage of this DLC. We get some idea of what this story will be because we haven't even seen a glimpse of this yet. So I'm just so curious at this point because it's been so quiet. I'm just so curious as to what it could possibly be. And I'm excited to talk about it. Again, I'm really excited to talk about all new stuff Resident Evil. And, I just want to say thank you so much for all the support, all the love and support. If there's one thing that's really going to be hitting me in the next week is how crazy all this is and how crazy, the Resident Evil community, brings everyone together and, brings people across the country. And really just everyone's just really cool. You know what I mean? And it's just cool to see the impact that a video game has on us to where we all just want to talk about it and discuss it and hang out, and we all have different opinions and we have debates and we have, just fun, conversations, and that's what it's all about, So if there's one kind of reminder of how lucky and grateful I am, it's definitely going to be on this trip, seeing everyone. And whether you're at the event or not, thank you so much. And thank you so much for all the love and support this past week for RE4 Remake as I continue to cover it. And every step of the way, just keep you guys posted. And thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Let's Talk Resident Evil podcast. Stay tuned as the road for Resident Evil 4 Remake continues.